Some things only make sense after the fact. A sentence in an interview, a lyric written late at night, a moment that felt ordinary until it didn't. There are people who seem to know something, quietly, privately, before anyone around them did. Not with confessions, not with warnings, just a pattern in their words. A recurring theme no one caught in time. And when you go back and listen now, it sounds completely different. This video looks at some of the most recognized names in entertainment history. People whose final words, interviews, and creative work carried something that only became clear in hindsight. These weren't signs anyone acted on. They were moments of unusual clarity, spoken by people who seemed to already understand something about their own story that the rest of the world wouldn't grasp until much later. The entertainment industry was never built for honesty. It was built for image. The people inside it were not supposed to be uncertain, not supposed to speak openly about endings or exhaustion. And yet, some of them did. In interviews, in lyrics, in the projects they chose to make. Certain people left behind something that felt less like performance and more like testimony. And when the endings came, those moments stopped being background noise. They became the story. One James Dean. In 1955, James Dean was 24 years old and already redefining what a film performance could feel like. East of Eden made him impossible to ignore. Rebel Without a Cause would make him permanent. He moved on screen in a way audiences hadn't seen before. Raw, unguarded, like the character and the person, had never fully separated. Shift and struggle. But James Dean didn't speak like someone with a long future ahead of him. In interviews, his words carried a philosophical weight that felt less like wisdom and more like someone who had already made a certain kind of peace. He spoke about speed, about living fast, not as a boast, but as a philosophy, as if slowness, to him, meant something closer to surrender. He once said plainly, without drama, without performance, that he didn't intend to live past 30. At the time, it was read as rebellion. In hindsight, it sounded different, turning moment and reflection. The film Giant had just wrapped. He hadn't seen it yet. On the 29th of September, 1955, he was driving to a road race in California. He was 24 years old. He didn't survive it. 3 films, 2 released in his lifetime, 1 he never saw, and across all of it, the interviews, the performances, the offhand comments, there was a thread, a sense that he already understood. His time was running differently than everyone else's. He didn't predict it precisely, but he didn't seem surprised by it either. But James Dean wasn't the only one whose words carried that particular weight. Tupac Shakur. By 1996, Tupac Shakur had become something larger than music, a voice that spoke simultaneously to anger, loss, ambition, and tenderness, often within the same verse. He recorded prolifically, as if aware that time was something to be outpaced, rather than managed. And behind the music, in interviews, he spoke with a directness most people in his position have been coached to avoid. Shift and struggle. He talked about death with unusual frequency. Not desperate, not broken, matter of fact, almost administrative. He spoke about not expecting to grow old, about the environment around him, about the statistical realities he was navigating daily. These are not metaphors. He said it plainly in multiple interviews across multiple years that he did not think he would survive long. And the people around him processed it as persona, as mythology being constructed in real time, because that's what the industry does. With uncomfortable clarity, it turns it into image, turning moment and reflection. He was shot on the 7th of September, 1996. He died 6 days later. He was 25 years old, and in the years that followed, his output took on an entirely different dimension. Not just as music, as documentation of someone who understood his own story more clearly than anyone around him was willing to acknowledge. When you place James Dean and Tupac Shakur beside each other, the details are completely different. Different decades, different industries, different circumstances, but the pattern underneath is the same. Both spoke about their endings repeatedly, plainly, on record. Both were surrounded by systems that absorbed those words. without responding to them. Both left behind work that feels, in hindsight, less like a career and more like someone trying to say something important before the time ran out. The industry does not create space for that kind of honesty. It files it under persona, under intensity, under brand, almost never under warning. And the further you look into this pattern, the more names appear. 3. Chadwick Boseman. In 2018, Chadwick Boseman stood at the center of one of the most culturally significant films in modern Hollywood history. Black Panther wasn't just a commercial event. It was a moment that carried weight for millions of people, far beyond what the screen could contain. In a very short time, he became something the industry rarely produces. Not just a star, a symbol, shift and struggle. But behind that, quietly, something else was happening. Since 2016, he had been living with a diagnosis. He chose to keep entirely private, and he continued working through treatment, through physical demands most healthy people would have found impossible, through press tours and productions that showed nothing of what was happening behind them. The people on set, in many cases, did not know. Turning moment, the words he left. But in his interviews during those final years, something is present. He spoke about time with an urgency that stood apart from standard press tour language, about purpose, not abstractly, but specifically, about using the time available, about leaving something behind that would outlast the moment. At the time, those words were received as grounded wisdom, the expected perspective of someone at the height of their influence. But now, they sound like something else entirely, like someone who knew precisely how much time they were working within and had decided very deliberately how to use every hour of it. Final stretch and reflection. Chadwick Boseman passed away in August of 2020. He was 43 years old. The world found out about his illness and his death at the same moment. In the days that followed, people went back to the interviews, back to the speeches, back to every moment where he had spoken about time, with that quiet, specific weight. And those words, which had always been notable, became something different. Not predictions, but the words of someone who had already done the calculation, who had already decided what mattered, who was, in some private way, already saying goodbye, in the only language the industry allowed him. Taken together, these stories reveal something that is difficult to sit with. These people were not silent. They spoke. James Dean spoke about it casually, as if it were already settled. Tupac Shakur spoke about it directly, in interviews that were recorded, archived, widely distributed. Chadwick Boseman spoke about it carefully, in a language available to him, in plain sight. And in each case, the world heard the words and understood them as something else, as persona, as philosophy, as the expected language of someone at that stage of their career. Because we are not built, as audiences, as industries, to hear those words for what they sometimes are. We are built to consume the image, and the image does not have room for that kind of clarity. The legacy of these people is enormous. The films, the music, the performances, they remain. But there's another legacy, quieter, harder to define. It is the record of what they tried to say before the end, in the space available to them. And if you listen carefully enough, it is one of the most human things any of them ever left behind. Stories like this are more common than most people realize. The names change, the decades change, but the pattern underneath stays the same. And the next story follows a strikingly similar path.